right, so you guys really wanted us to dig into this whole mess with Wizards of the Coast and the original D&D creators.
Yeah, it's certainly blowing up online.
It is, and especially with Elon Musk kind of jumping into the ring too.
Right. It's gotten a lot of attention, and it's especially for people who've been around D&D for a long time, it's not just like some corporate drama.
Oh, no, absolutely.
This is personal.
Yeah, and we've got like two main sources we're going to be looking at for this deep dive.
Okay.
First, we have this YouTube video from Mark Kern, better known as GRS Online.
Yeah.
He's had, quite a career in gaming.
Right.
Worked on things like World of Warcraft and Diablo.
Big name.
Yeah, huge name in the industry. And he's also been, pretty outspoken about what he calls like woke culture and how that's affecting gaming.
Yeah.
And this video features Rob Kuntz, who's one of the original creators of D&D.
Right.
So his perspective is like essential here to understanding this whole thing.
Absolutely. I mean, Rob worked directly with Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. Like,
yeah,
he was there
at the very beginning.
Yeah.
So
to hear him talk now, like with so much, raw emotion, really gives you a sense of just how deeply this is affecting the people who were there at the start.
And then we have Elon Musk.
Of course.
Who, decided to chime in a very typical Elon Musk fashion.
In a very Elon way, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But first, let's kind of set the stage here.
Okay.
What exactly started this whole controversy? Well, Wizards of the Coast, the current owners of D&D, they released this 50th anniversary book.
Right.
And let's just say it hasn't exactly been met with like universal praise.
That's putting it mildly.
Yeah.
A lot of people, especially like folks who've been playing D&D for decades, they see this as an attempt by Wizards of the Coast to kind of like rewrite the history of D&D.
Yeah.
And by doing that, diminish the role of like the original creators.
So let's get into Rob Kuntz's perspective. This YouTube video that was posted on Mark Kern's channel, it is something else, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
Kuntz does not hold back at all.
No.
He calls the people at Wizards of the Coast snakes, vile, posers.
Wow.
He even accuses them of basically wanting to rewrite history just to make more money.
I mean, you can hear the anger in his voice, right? Like,
yeah.
He feels betrayed.
Yeah.
Like the company's trying to erase the legacy of Gary Gygax and the other creators who, put their heart and soul into this game.
Yeah. He sees this 50th anniversary book as a deliberate attempt to separate the game from where it came from.
Right.
From its roots. And Kuntz even goes as far as to say that Wizards of the Coast are afraid of Gary Gygax's legacy.
Really?
Yeah. They resent that they weren't there for the creation of D&D.
Right.
And now they're trying to claim it as their own by going after the fan base and changing history.
I mean, and that's it right there.
Yeah.
It's this tension between like corporate ownership and the spirit of creativity. That I think is like at the core of this.
Yeah.
Can a company really like own something as organic and imaginative as a game?
Especially a game like D&D that was born from the passion of these individuals.
Exactly. It's a very complex issue.
So let's look at some of the specific criticisms.
Okay.
One of the biggest ones is that D&D in its early days, it promoted things like slavery, misogyny, and cultural appropriation. The book highlights this, and to be fair, there are some D&D historians who agree with that.
Sure. It's true that early D&D, it reflects the, the norms and biases of the time it was made in. Like, gaming was a much smaller thing back then, and the vast majority of players were indeed white men. But to just condemn it outright, I think you're missing something there.
Yeah, it's like looking at a historical document and being mad that they didn't have smartphones.
Exactly.
You have to think about the time period.
You have to think about the context.
And Rob Kuntz, he says this too. He says early D&D wasn't trying to be discriminatory. It reflected the interests of the creators.
Who at the time were mostly men.
Yeah, primarily men.
Yeah.
He's saying that women weren't excluded.
Right.
They just weren't drawn to it the same way.
Okay, interesting.
Kuntz points out that this whole narrative ignores the women who are involved.
Okay.
Like Lee Gold.
Oh, yeah.
Who was a big figure in the early D&D community.
Yeah, and she was the editor of Dragon magazine.
Right.
One of the most important publications for D&D fans back then. So to ignore figures like her is to erase a huge part of the story.
Right.
It's not just about Wizards of the Coast. It's about remembering all the people who made D&D what it is.
It's this debate about judging the past by today's standards.
It is, yeah.
Which is really tough.
It's something we see everywhere, right?
Yeah, it's all over the place.
It's like this tension between acknowledging the flaws of the past and understanding, like, the world they were in.
Where do you draw the line? Well, one person who seems to have a very clear line is Elon Musk, and he wants everyone to know exactly where he stands.
Of course.
After seeing this controversy unfold, he decided to jump in with a tweet, or an X, I guess I should say.
An X, yeah.
That set the internet on fire.
Oh, I'm sure.
He wrote, nobody gets to trash Gary Gygax and the geniuses who created Dungeons & Dragons. What the fuck is wrong with Hasbro and WotC? May they burn in hell.
Wow. That's a statement.
Yeah.
And that's what's so interesting about this. Yeah. Why would someone like Elon Musk, with everything he's got going on, feel the need to get involved in this D&D drama so intensely?
He could be, focusing on rockets or electric cars or whatever.
And literally anything else, yeah.
But he decided to defend the creators of this decades-old tabletop game.
Yeah, it's not exactly what you'd expect from Mr. Future.
So what's going on here?
I don't know, but I think it's worth thinking about how Musk's worldview connects to this. He's always been about challenging conventions, pushing boundaries, disrupting entire industries.
Yeah, do you see a parallel there?
Totally. Those are the same qualities that Gygax and his collaborators had.
They were pioneers, creating something totally new.
In a time when tabletop gaming wasn't even really a thing.
Yeah, it was a true act of imagination and innovation.
And maybe that's what spoke to Musk.
Hmm.
He sees this attack on the legacy of D&D's creators as an attack on innovation and creativity itself.
It's a fascinating way to look at it.
It is.
And it makes you think about just how powerful D&D is.
Yeah.
And how important it is to remember where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
Even in this tech-obsessed world we live in, it seems like the stories, the characters, the power of imagination that D&D unleashed it still matters.
It does, and it makes you wonder, if a tech giant like Elon Musk, the future guy, is so passionate about defending the past, what does that tell us about the future of imagination and storytelling?
That is a great question. And one that we'll definitely dig into more as we keep going through this whole situation.
It's interesting to think that this fight between, the old guard and the corporate world, it might actually be like a tiny version of a much bigger shift that's happening in our culture.
You're right. It's not just about D&D.
No.
We see this kind of conflict everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like there's this tension between honoring the past and trying to adapt to the present.
And it's getting more intense.
Yeah, it's getting worse.
Yeah. And I think that's maybe why this D&D story, this fight for the soul of the game, has really connected with people.
Yeah.
It's like it speaks to something deeper, this fear that the things we care about, the stories we love, are at risk of being like packaged up and sanitized by corporations.
And in the case of D&G, it's almost like they're trying to run away from the very things that made the game so special in the first place.
Yeah, maybe they're trying to reach a wider audience, to make it more, acceptable, less controversial.
Right.
But in doing that, they could alienate the very community that kept it alive.
And that brings us back to Rob Kuntz.
Yeah.
And how fiercely he's defending where D&D came from. He's not just angry, he's like heartbroken.
Yeah.
He feels like the company is trying to wipe out what Gary Gygax and the others did.
And you can understand why. Okay. I mean, he was there right next to Gygax, and Arneson, he put his heart and soul into building this world, this game that has given so many people joy.
Right.
And now he sees the company that owns it trying to rewrite that history.
Yeah, to minimize what the creators did.
It's got to be tough.
And Kuntz is very specific about what he doesn't like about Wizards of the Coast.
Okay.
He thinks they are deliberately trying to shrink Gygax's role in the history of the game. He even says they're afraid of Gygax's legacy.
It's like he thinks they feel threatened by him, by his influence on the game. I wish they were part of that original team. And now they're trying to take ownership by changing the story.
That's a big accusation.
It is.
Do you think there's any truth to it?
It's hard to know for sure.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going on in their heads.
Right.
But it's definitely an interesting way to think about it.
Especially after Musk's reaction.
Yeah.
I mean, for someone like him to come out swinging so hard for the D&D creators tells you this is more than just a PR mess up.
Exactly. Musk sees a connection between the struggles of those early D&D guys and his own fights against the establishment.
He's all about disruption and innovation.
Yeah.
Shaking things up.
Those are the same things Gygax and his crew did when they made D&D. Maybe that's why he had to speak out. It's like he's saying, if they can erase their contributions, they can erase anyone's.
It's a powerful message. And it makes you wonder if this whole controversy is a turning point, maybe a moment where fans start pushing back against corporations taking over their hobbies.
It could be, we've seen it with video games.
Yeah, with loot boxes and microtransactions.
Right. Maybe this is just the beginning, the start of something bigger where people want to take back ownership of the things they love.
And for D&D fans, that means honoring what Gary Gygax and the others did. They were the ones who dared to imagine a world where anything was possible.
Yeah, where the only limit was your imagination.
Exactly.
And that's what makes D&D so unique.
Yeah.
That's what brings people to it year after year.
And it's something worth fighting for.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap things up, I want to go back to something you said earlier. Yeah. Because the game is all about imagination and stories. And those are things that go beyond time and technology.
That's what gets me about Elon Musk.
Yeah.
The tech guy who's supposed to be all about the future is out there defending a tabletop game that's over 50 years old.
It's weird, right?
It seems like a total contradiction.
But maybe it's not. Maybe it shows that even in this digital world, we crave the things that D&D gives us, creativity, imagination, shared stories.
And those are the things that Gary Gygax and the others brought to life.
Exactly.
They made a world where anything was possible.
Where the only limit was your imagination.
But I think first we have to see that both sides have a point.
Oh, okay.
Some people think D&D has to change with the times.
Right.
That it needs to let go of some of the stuff from the past to attract new and different players.
And that makes sense.
Yeah.
We can't ignore that parts of early D&D reflect the biases of that time.
Right. But then there are those who say D&D's roots are what make it special. That trying to erase or downplay what the original creators did is disrespectful and hurts the game.
And that's a good point, too.
Yeah.
We can't just act like the past doesn't matter.
So how do we find a balance?
It's tough.
How do we honor the legacy, but also make sure it stays relevant and open to everyone in the future?
I think it starts with talking openly and honestly.
Yeah. Wizards needs to listen to the fans who've been around for a while and acknowledge the people who came before them.
They need to find a way to celebrate the game's history without trying to change it or rewrite it.
Exactly. And as fans, we need to be part of that conversation.
Yeah.
Share our thoughts.
Yeah.
Listen to others and try to find a way forward together.
That respects both the past and the future of D&D.
Yeah. It's not easy.
It's a challenge for sure.
But it's worth it.
Yeah.
Because at its heart, D&D is about community.
Yeah.
Of sharing stories, about creating something amazing together.
And that's something that goes beyond any controversy or corporate decision.
Yeah, the power of imagination, the joy of adventure, those will always be at the core of D&D no matter what.
It reminds you that even in a world full of tech and big companies, the human spirit of creativity and storytelling is still strong.
Absolutely. That's something to be excited about.
It really is. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up.
Okay.
Did you enjoy video? Consider tossing support on my Patreon. It's best way to support orcs. If you would like to see more content, subscribe and post comments below. It better not be bad.
Thanks for joining us as we went through this really interesting and sometimes messy topic.
We hope you enjoyed the conversation.
We'll see you next time for more deep dives into the things that matter.